I see dead people.
Hot shit.
Here's Johnny.
Stop.
We have such sights to show you.
Bring the motherfucking ruckus. Fuck you too.
So, gonna start the only way I know how.
See, I'm writing a list because I know at some point I'm gonna forget all of them.
What does your list compile of currently?
Ghostbusters was the first thing. Blum Tram, Monsters Female, which I forget. Eternal Bloodlines.
I'm gonna pull up the list. We're gonna go through it.
Yeah.
You don't need to write it down.
I would say I want to have it like readily available for myself because I know how I am.
I'm literally gonna pull.
What was? There was one that was nuclear?
Yeah.
Well,
Like
I don't
glowing
remember that
green zombies. We were going through like a power plant and there was like a van crashed into the one wall.
Okay.
It was across from Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the ground floor. It was opposite Jurassic World.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was like pseudo-militaristic. There were monkeys. Monkey experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
The two I keep getting, I don't want to say confused, but flip-flopping is the monsters, the she-monsters, and the monstrose,
Yep.
the Latin.
The Latin
and I keep
monsters.
going, monstrose, the females, and I'm like, wait, no, monstrose is the Latin. So
Monsters and Monstros, the fact that they did two of them on the
Yeah.
same coast this year is a little annoying.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I like those, and I feel like I definitely liked the Monstros more last year than this year, but there were still
I agree.
Still some good moments. Hello everyone, this is Lots of Pasta. Here's Bong.
Oh, where am I?
There's Bong. There you go. Do what you do best.
I've never done this before, kids.
We've both never done this on the podcast before. This is our first time, episode 283. She was still cherry.
Yep. She's burning good. I gotta be a good one.
I hate to say it, but I have been smoking more. I've just been stressed out, and I've just been coming home, just fucking taking full rips to the dome. Oh, I meant to tell you, you left your bong here for like 6 months.
Yeah, something like that.
I never once hit it.
Which is a shame because it's the nicest bong
I was
I've
gonna
ever
say
owned.
it's like double chambered. It's like a clean 2 feet tall. Like I looked at it with majesty and awe every time I looked at it because it was in my room, almost ornamental at one point. But it's just like I had not been smoking so much working up to California because I wanted my tolerance to be non-existent. I wanted to go into California this time and actually smoke weed. Last time I got zonked when we were recording in California, we literally had to stop because I was just I am too high.
I was too.
Their weed over there is like 39% THC, and I'm used to like maybe
22?
20. Yeah, and it's just tough. But been smoking, been sitting here talking, obviously with Where Am I? Because we're back again to talk about Halloween Horror Nights 2024. Because we did, I attended both coasts again this year, and Where Am I joined me when we were in California, when we did Hollywood this year, because that's what we did together last year. So it's basically just a replay of last year, and now it's cool because now you have the perspective to say they did certain things better this year, they did certain things better last year. Yeah. And overall, our experience this year, I did prefer. I think ultimately I had more fun in all of the houses. I think Hollywood's layout has grown on me a little bit more. We got to take our time. We weren't rushed. We didn't have to. What walking we did, I was more prepared for. Sure. It also didn't feel like as much walking as we did last year.
Well, because we did park into.
Yeah, we did park into Horror Nights last time, but this time we kind of just showed up just to eat dinner and wait for the park to turn over. I think the benefit there was hindsight. But
Yeah.
outside of hindsight, the housing list of like houses I do think were stronger last year.
Yeah.
And that's not
the
wrapping on
experience.
this year as a negative experience at all, because I don't think there's any way that I go to this and don't have fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think when the people, and I do mean Horror Nights consumers, addicts, however you want to put it, their target demographic would generally say this year was a
It was a lull.
yes, but what's the word for just like a trash, like a we're not putting as much work into it, so we're just gonna trash it. Like it was like a purposeful.
Yeah, not a scapegoat. But
Yeah, it was just a purposeful explanation for them to dump their recent ideas but not quite commitments. Never quite got that white whale IP. We will talk about it. And you know, the lineup was just okay.
Yeah.
It was just okay. And I would say California's lineup was not as good as Florida's, but I will also get into that as well. And that's not being partial to like the coasts at all. I'm not playing favorites with Orlando to California. They're both very different experiences, but they have very similar things going on. I don't think I can outright say one coast is better than the other. They both have their pros and they both have their cons. It's very much like watching the classic John Carpenter Halloween, and then you go and you watch, I don't know, like the fourth one, the sixth one, the eighth one, the fucking new series, the new trilogy that they did. There are different ways to do things. Hey, stop eating random shit on the floor. You never do that. Stop doing that. Sit down. Join the podcast. So,
Come snuggle? You want to come snuggle?
she doesn't always like that.
Yeah.
There always be these things where you can look at it and say that was done with love, that was done with sincerity, that was really good, versus that was kind of dog shit, that was kind of on purposely bad, that was kind of a
It was an
off the cuff entry. But anyway, enough beating around the fucking bushes. I want to start real quick by going over the 10 houses that were in Orlando this year. I'm just going to, go over them briefly, tell you what I felt about them, which ones I know Alley Cat liked the most, my experiences, just to get through it really quickly, so that we could focus on talking about California. And I will also keep the shared things between coasts short so that we can talk more about, the specific things going on in those stories and those houses themselves. The first big IP with I think a lot of question marks to a lot of people this year was A Quiet Place. And I have to admit I was mixed as fuck on both the expectation and the actual execution. In Florida, they had better scenes because they have better sets. You're not quite stuck in dark, black tunnels or experiences going around corners as much as California does, and they play that to their strengths for a lot of houses. But the things that play to the strengths of Orlando are having these big, huge scenes, these huge sets that you walk into. And, like, for one, the Orlando Quiet Place house, the minute you walk in, had the farmhouse with all the strings of red lights and the corn on each side. And I was just like, this is a small thing that's missing from the California's. Yeah. The California's scale is the way I want to say it. But more specifically, the animatronics were the same on both coasts. They had lungers coming from boo holes that were actually attached to people that were like making them spring out at people, and they had full animatronics. I'm talking full robotics, simulated repetitive actions that would trigger as people went through. And I certainly prefer the latter. I would rather them just do a bunch of robots, just have that be the house, because they frankly did that with Chucky last year. They can get away with it. For the people sitting out there who say we can't get a Gremlins house, you're full of shit. We 100% can get a Gremlins house. In fact, it's one of the ones I want the most. But I'm looking at the Krampus house, the Chucky house, and the Quiet Place houses that they've done from the last, like, I don't know, like 5 or so years, or 10 or so years that Horror Nights has existed. They've proven their animatronics are fine. And they are scary, and they can be big, and they can be daunting, and you know, I don't want to get into what I dislike about Quiet Place as a story just yet, but like as a house in Florida, the only difference was they had huge sets, huge buildings to look at that made the scale of what you were walking through feel more post-apocalyptic, more empty, more thematically in tune. The second one that a lot of people were looking forward to, because the movie was pretty okay, was the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire house. Again, both houses were able to pull off the better kind of large firehouse with spikes. Both coasts had that scene. The one in Florida was naturally bigger and smack dab in the middle of the house. You didn't start there, but it was certainly bigger and felt crazier. In the Florida one, and they just have the space for it. They can afford it. Scares were quite literally the same. I actually think the scares were better in California. They had more ghosts from the entire series in California, where they only had a couple in Florida, and I want to say that they mostly leaned on stuff from the movie in the Florida one. California is able to take more risks, I assume. But yeah, that was an IP that people were looking forward to. Ghostbusters is awesome. I'm always happy to see Ghostbusters. The house they did in 2019 gets a little bit of flack, but I personally loved it. I can remember several solid scares in that house that I just remember fondly about Horror Nights that year. What I would argue the third and final IP for this year in Florida was Insidious The Further. It was a greatest hits house. I mean, there's no other way to say it. On both coasts, they went through all 5 of the movies, featured all 4 of the bad guys, because Red Guy comes back for first and fifth movie. Both of the movies played the same. There wasn't a huge difference other than the ending. I would say I preferred the ending in Florida more, because again, they have the space, they have the scale to do it, but in the final scene, when you enter the red door and you're in the attic of the family's house, they had the space to build out the full huge attic, and they did a mirror trick where between boards on the walls, light was reflecting off of the further back rooms and the rooms behind us as we enter, that it made it look like in between the boards you could see through them, but really it was a mirror that was reflecting what was on the opposite wall, and there were people standing behind the mirrors, so it would look like nothing's behind the boards that you can see have spaces and lights reflecting and showing. But each of the bad guys, all 4 of them, jumped out at once. You're going through the attic, you're looking at the red door, the lights go out, and when they come up, literally everyone in the room gets scared by all 4 of the guys all at once. And it was a fucking awesome way to end that house.
Yeah, I remember in line, there's someone standing at the exit saying to you, "You're okay now. You're okay now.
You're fine." Yeah.
And like
someone like chases you out of that house.
But I remember looking at that in the line, going, "What do you like? What do they even do?" And then coming out at the end and going, "Oh,
I get it now."
You know, like it was California
did what California does best, which is you turn around a short angle to kind of leave, and you see the exit in front of you, and you think, this is done. This house is over. I'm walking out now, because you can see the door and you could step through it. But then a screen on your right, a curtain on your right, whatever flap gets pulled back, and they had the red demon do one last scare even after the last full scene, and it made people just jump right out of that house, myself included. Where am I? Self included.
Yeah.
We were both 10 feet out that doorway when he jumped out. Insidious was cool in Florida. We'll talk more about what the scenes were and what we went through when we get over to the other side. I'll just say it right now, my least liked house on both coasts this year, unfortunately, was Universal Monsters.
Really?
The story, I just felt on both coasts, was extraordinarily ham-fisted, very forced, very, I don't want to say aggressive because it was non-aggressive, but like the story itself was aggressive.
So
and like when you're walking through a house, you don't have time. You have 3 minutes to swallow this entire narrative, and Florida was worse about it. Because Florida would have these rooms between rooms with books, and words would come up, and you'd feel obligated to read them 30 seconds as you run by it in going in between rooms. I was like, this is fucking awful. In California, they had paintings.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, does that improve the concept? Because all that I need to do is see the painting for all it's worth in one go and hear a subtle voiceover, which I hated. And I understood where we were going next. In the Florida one, you are forced to read while people are telling you to continue the conga line, and you don't have any time to consume that. And next thing you know, you're in a mummy's crypt. Next thing you know, you're in the middle of a forest, and there's a werewolf with tits, and Frankenstein is dead, and the bride is screaming. Next thing you know, both coasts, Saskia Van Helsing's head gets ripped off. Next thing you know, the bride is there, but she's not, and she's holding a head, and she's screaming, and then the house is just, like, done, and you're just like, what a fucking ending.
See, that was the one that I had the least expectations going into.
Yeah.
That surprised me the most.
I think it's because you looked at the umbrella that was Universal Monsters and said, well, this can only be so many things, and then it wasn't any of the things. It was very much like, this is a graphic novel narrative that we're going to shoehorn into a 4-minute house, and you're going to try to swallow it all at once, and it's going to end on a cliffhanger that they'll probably never answer.
Yeah. Well,
because everyone likes to think, and I'm gonna deny it right now, everyone likes to think that all of the Universal Monster houses starting like 10 years ago have all been continuing the same story, have all been like the next chapter in the story. It's 100% bullshit. Because last year they had like fucking, it was in France, and there was Jekyll and Hyde and Phantom and Invisible Man, and it had none of the classics. And like, just to sidestep all of your homeboys in one house because the universe can is just universal flexibility. It's not the next chapter in the story. Frankenstein versus the Wolfman had a lot of similarities with Universal Monsters Collide, which was 2 years ago, which was Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy all fighting each other. Or with Werewolf Man fighting each other. All 4 of them fight. No. Frankenstein wasn't there for that one. It was Wolfman, Dracula, and Mummy all fighting each other. So the previous year was Frankenstein versus Wolfman, which many people thought was cool. And then they had Bride of Frankenstein, which featured Frankenstein and Dracula's bride. But then Universal Monsters Collide. It's a long thing. Trust me, it's not a continuous story. This year proves that more than any. Because I believe the brides were all dead in the Bride of Frankenstein story, or about to be killed. So even though the bride is back, I would not say that this is a direct continuation of the previous house. We'll talk more about what we liked about that and what we disliked about that next time. Interestingly enough, I hope you listened to the last episode where am I and when I went over what was in California last year, because California gave Florida a transplant house this year. Most people online would call this is where Universal is getting lazy, because they literally just got shipped California's sets, animatronics, costumes, everything, and that became Florida's house this year. And I will outright say 100%, Orlando's was not as good as California's. This house's theme is aggressive, and it's dark, and kids are being eaten and killed in every room, almost every room of that entire house.
It's brutal.
Monsters of Latin America is the one I'm talking about. The first one. It is brutal. There are bird monsters, child stealers, fucking tall man that steals your spine. He was my favorite in California. Barely saw him in Florida this year. I got better scares in California, and when you know that there's something better out there and your expectations let you down on trying the new version of it, it just feels like diet Monstros. And I'd rather have something completely new than go through diet Monstros.
Sure.
Now, one of the cool ones that most people got me really excited about, because I didn't get to do the first one, was Slaughter Cinema 2, which is a direct sequel, wink, wink, nod, nod, to Slaughter Cinema 1, only in theme that we're back at the Cary Drive-In. We're jumping from B-movie to B-movie to B-movie, sci-fi horror plots. There were lots of really funny moments in this one. Like, there was an entire sequence where zombie clowns just came out of, like, a cave, and I just thought it was funny. It's like, Night of the Undead Zombie Clowns, and I was like, this is funny. But it ended with, like, mummy strippers from Mars. And there was just literally a girl in bandage wraps at like a mummy, wearing a bikini, dancing on a stage while everyone around her was dead.
I mean, you did say my third favorite word.
Stripper?
Mars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the alien part I think was just because it's like she was radioactive and that's why she was back to life or something. That was the sci-fi B plot of that single room. But there was a cool Terminator-esque sequence in the middle of the house where they had a guy who was like half robot, like a cyborg. And then there was a cool animatronic of a robot with like a ton of laser hands and that was shooting lasers across the room. And you were like walking through like Judgment Day trenches. It was a fun little wink to Terminator, which isn't at any of the parks anymore, sadly. Funny House definitely met my expectations. One of my more favorite experiences at Orlando this year. Next one, which I just thought was mid, which... going into it, I thought it was going to be mid. My expectations were mid. It was just okay. I remember turning to Alley Cat, walking out of it, and she just went, eh. And when she does that, I know that my judgment is in the right place. This is the Museum Deadly Exhibits. Thematically, let me tell you, horror version of Night at the Museum, I'm on board for that.
Yeah, honestly, that sounds way up.
Dinosaur skeleton comes to life, starts eating people. Mm-hmm. Caveman exhibit comes to life, they start eating people, killing people, smacking people. Native Americans, fucking tribesmen, whatever direction you want to go in. Then you could go in the direction of a reptile room, or an aquatics room, or a history room, where there's like Vikings or anything. Like, that's where you win me over. I will say that this one's obsession with tying it all back to a stone played more into its theme, because this deadly exhibit was almost exclusively a worldly exhibit. And by that I mean different time periods and different like masks and stuff. And then there were also just monsters made of like mold that were like coming out of the walls. The reason for that is the B plot suggests that a rotting stone found in the ground brought all the exhibits in the museum to life. And now they are also rotting, but they are craving your, like, souls and your life essence and shit. So we're walking through this house and, like, a Viking jumps out at me and I'm like walking on a boat in an exhibit room. I'm like, that's cool. But then, like... some moldy guy just comes out of the wallpaper and like comes up to my face and I'm like, nah, that didn't do it for me, champ. And then like you walk through a hallway full of masks and they're all kind of dancing on the walls, kind of like Tiki Room Disney style, and I was like, that's endearing, that's cute, that's neat. And then you just you never quite get the cool aspects of a museum. You don't get the stone statues, the dinosaur bones, you don't get the reptile house or any of that shit. You don't get any cavemans, the deepest it goes is like tribal and Viking, and those are the only two things that they like naturally studied in that exhibit. Which I thought was interesting. Not a great house. In the long run, not a great house. Even Alley Cat was just like, it was okay. Expectations high. Meeting expectations, I would say, is Major Sweets' Candy Factory. Because on paper, you say, oh, fucked up Willy Wonka. Yeah. This could be good. It's already naturally dark. Unfortunately, for a concept, even carrying over from the scare zone that this was 2 years ago in Florida, it started off as an area where you're walking through a town's parade, and all the kids got into some bad candy and all became, like, killers. And so, like, you had townspeople running around a parade, like, screaming, like, who gave the kids candy? And then the kids are, like, killing people with, like, whatever they can get their hands on, but they're all wearing, like, crazy costumes. It's a neat concept. When you tell me that you're going to Willy Wonka it, I expect a little bit more than just kids going around killing people with things that they would find in a factory. I wanted the kids to be, like, also mutating and going through the factory and
had eaten something.
They'd eaten so much taffy that they'd become taffy monsters. Go full Garbage Pail Kids with it. Yeah. Go, bite the bullet and go the fucking distance with that concept. Unfortunately, just a bunch of crazy people in a candy factory. Sure. Some cool kills. I will say the smells were great. Lots of fun effects. I remember walking under a taffy puller that had, like, bones of people getting, like, mashed into the taffy, and I was like, that's a neat effect. I walked into a room, and a bunch of barrels were glowing and shooting out liquid and shit, and I was like, oh, that's, like, some type of syrup or something. Like, it was neat. It was fun. I just didn't think that the scare actors went as far as they could with the concept. For some reason, they took the Willy Wonka guy out of most of the scenes, which I felt was sad, because he was the mastermind. You don't remove the Joker from a Batman house, Yeah. But in my head, it's just like, why is his, like, henchman chick... She did have a cool name. It was Miss Treats.
Huh.
So she was running around trying to kill people with stuff. I just remember being like, no, let the kids do the killing and just show me a fucked up guy laughing. Sure. You don't need to be any more aggressive than that.
Look what I did,
Yeah, just have a guy just being like, my children are hungry, and then they, like, run into the room and try to eat you. Like, I want some candy? Like, I just expected more camp, honestly. Ironically, I'm saying that I was expecting more camp. Good house, definitely like a B+. Not close to the best of the best, but good. Alley Cat's favorite this year, Goblin's Feast. It was as D&D, as fantasy as it could have gone with the concept. I'm talking about commitment to a theme. Goblin's Feast was commitment this year. Huh. You literally start off in a tavern where a bunch of goblins have taken over and they're eating all the patrons.
Okay.
It is hilariously on point.
Yeah.
They are stealing their clothes and wearing them and pretending to be rich bureaucrat, aristocracy, big wigs, and it's funny because they're still trying to eat you, even dressed like that. It was really funny, and then the house gets really scenery driven. You leave the tavern, you run through a forest that's like filled with giants, and you're seeing like big hands and big feet, and then screens like projected up near the roof of like an angry guy yelling down at you, and it looks like it's his foot that's stomped on the ground. Like it was thematically very well done. Then you get into some old dude's castle. Obviously, the orcs and the goblins broke in there. Now they're eating all the people in there and having a party in there now. They're saying you're conversely late to the party, but you're also on the menu for the party. It was fun. There's like a big troll at the end, and he's eating with like it took like probably 3 people to operate him, but there were individual arms and an actual animatronic face saying things. And then I turned the corner where there's supposed to be my favorite scare in this house, and the boo hole was empty, and I was forced to leave because they wouldn't let me wait to see this guy. My favorite goblin that I saw on all of the walkthroughs, whatever promotional material for this house, was a snobby, femmy boy goblin wearing, like, dressed to the nines in the rich old dude's clothes, pretending he was the rich old dude. And he says, like, "Oh no, the slaves are getting away." And then you leave the house. And he wasn't fucking there. And it made me so sad. And Allie was just like, why are you upset? That house was awesome. And I was like, but there was supposed to be a guy at the end who's, like, dressed as the person whose castle they took. And I wanted to see what he had to say. And she was just like, yeah, well, you know, just in your head, say that they ate him. Say that the troll room was the last room in the house, and they just ate him. And I'm like, you're being practical. What you don't know, you don't care about. I see where you're coming from. Yeah. But in my head, it was the part I was looking forward to the most, and it made me sad. Last house of Orlando. Triplets of Terror. And this is where I'm going to stop you, Universal, because sometimes you have really great ideas, and sometimes you're on point, and your originals are awesome. I've seen them. I know you're capable of them. This didn't hit. This didn't hit on so many levels. Next time you want to do something that is so close to another concept, just go get the concept. This house was trying so hard to be The Strangers without being The Strangers that it was just disappointing that it wasn't The Strangers. Because it probably isn't super hard to get that IP. They're just coming out with new movies right now. There's going to be one every Halloween for the next, you know, for last year, this year, and the next year. So it's just like, put in the effort, put down the money, get the IP, do the thing, go through all of the movies. You don't have to just go through the new one. Go through everyone liked the 80s-ish sequel that came out, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. Do a best of. What you did with Insidious, what you did with Quiet Place, just do a best of. And you didn't. Instead, you came up with some weird story about 3 sibling kids going full metal autism on their family and killing them in different ways, and then bridging it in the middle and aging them up like 30 years and saying that they came back to do it to the same town again. There's something there, like a House of a Thousand Corpses meets Devil's Rejects, and how those 2 sequels are handled, and like how those carry over from, like, they were young, now they're old, but they're killing people the same way and they still got it. Like, you were trying to do that. You didn't pull it off because no one gives a shit about Tom, Dick, and Jane, or, you know, whatever their fucking names were, wearing weird masks, pretending to be creepy, because it didn't hit on so many different levels. The masks were stupid, the mannerisms were stupid, there were, like, no jump scares in the entire house. It was just watching people with masks killing other people who didn't. Sure. And when I say that, it sounds kind of like You're Next, which is also a great IP that they could have done instead. Because then you have the people running around in the animal masks, and you're, like, just running around that house trying not to get killed by them. Honestly, that actually sounds like a pretty damn cool house. Another IP that should be cheap to get, because it was a movie that came out 10 fucking years ago. It was one of those situations, and they do it every once in a while, where their idea is so close to something that already exists. Like how I said Willy Wonka to Major Sweets. But they don't just pony up and buy the IP. Like, obviously you can't pony up and buy the Willy Wonka IP. There's no way they would let that happen at Horror Nights. Sure. But this is something that was so, like, it's 3 serial killers. Yeah. You literally could have picked up just gave you 3 examples of different IPs you could have picked up. House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, talk to Rob Zombie, he would love the money. I believe Blumhouse owns Strangers, or always did, so talk to them. You have them in your pocket already.
Yeah, you're already contacted with them.
And You're Next, which shouldn't be hard to get. I think it's a Magnet film that came out 10 years ago. Shouldn't be tough. Concept was there. Execution was not. Anyway, that's all of Orlando. I think my favorite house was probably Slaughter Cinema 2. I know Alley Cat's favorite was Goblin's Feast. I would put Goblin's Feast at number 2. I would then say the IPs land somewhere in the middle. Except for Insidious. Insidious is actually probably my number 1. So that's my 1, 2, 3. Insidious, fucking Slaughter Cinema, and then Goblin Feast. Insidious was just on a different level in Florida this year. And it hit. Every turn was a hit. Every room was dressed to be a specific scene from the movies. It hit, and I liked it, and it was good. Let's talk about California. Firstly, to just talk about the trip a little bit, shout out to Midway Car Rentals.
Oh my God.
I'm going to give them a shout out.
Best part of the trip, absolutely.
I'm going to give them a shout out. Midway Car Rentals, new company operating out of Los Angeles, 5 minutes from the fucking airport. Highly recommend. Reason we highly recommend is I paid for the cheapest economy mid-size car that I can get, and they ran out of all of their economy mid-size cars. So they look at us and they say, do you want a truck? Do you want a minivan? Or do you want a convertible? And I looked at the guy.
And he told us specifically convertible Mustang.
Convertible Ford Mustang.
Yeah, he knew exactly which convertible it was.
He was looking right at the inventory, just saying, I can give this to you. And I think I asked him 3 or 4 times if he was fucking with us.
Oh, yeah.
It took a while for me to, actually comprehend that they did not have the stock that I was asking for.
Yeah.
Well, and there were 9 other people in the joint. And
they were just...
And we walked outside and we saw that they also got a free upgrade to a Ford Mustang. Yeah. So, I just started laughing. And I turned to Where Am I? And I just immediately said, this is our luck. This was meant to happen because we wanted to do this the prior year.
Yeah.
We went with a sports car. We could have had a convertible. When I asked Where Am I if he wanted a convertible or a sports car, we specifically went for the sports car because it was something that Where Am I wanted to see.
Well, and it was
had
worth
more
trunk space.
It had more trunk space. Because we were worried about baggage. Yeah, that was a longer trip.
The convertible was a Z4, and the sports car was it wasn't an M, but it was a 400 series, something like that. And it was getting a back seat, getting a trunk.
That baby zipped.
Yeah.
We both enjoyed driving that one. But there was something about the California sunshine, the wonderful weather, the beautiful breeze, not a fucking cloud in the sky, but not too hot, not too cold, just perfect California weather, convertible everywhere, all hours of day, even at 2 o'clock coming back from fucking Oogie Bash, top is down and we're listening to music about a guy getting rammed by 4 guys. 4 big guys. And shout out to Dig Bar. Everyone get in on Dig Bar. I was crying laughing because of course the top is down and I put my phone on shuffle and the gay shitty music I listen to around my friends to make them laugh comes on in the middle of the suburbs. Music so loud, 1 o'clock in the morning. Anyone who we drove through that neighborhood was hearing about some dude getting 4 big guys. Yeah. But yeah, we went to Oogie Bash. Oogie Bash was cool. Oogie Bash was fun. I don't know if it was worth the price. I think that's the thing most people ask was it worth what you paid? And we paid about, I want to say $240 to $260 for that single night. And I'd probably just say $200 is fine.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't deserve much over that.
I think the fact that we could do an entire park in an evening was...
We did the entire park
valuable
in 5 hours.
In terms of, like...
And we had time to do a little bit more, but we were leaving, like, right when they were closing. Like, people were heading out. So it's just, like... Did we do it all? Did we have fun doing it all? Yes, to both. I would recommend the ticket to anyone who hadn't done that before. Oogie Bash
we didn't end up doing Incredicoaster, right?
Oh, no, we did.
We did? I thought it closed down.
We went back.
We went back? Okay.
Yeah. I would not leave that park without doing Incredicoaster.
That's fair.
It's probably my favorite ride in that park.
It's the only intense ride in that park.
We only did Guardians once. I wanted to do Guardians twice. We only did it once. The wait for that was down because one of their 3 stacks wasn't working. But it's a fine park. I mean, it's getting work done. I don't want to get into it too much, but it's confirmed for like 2 brand new rides, and that park absolutely needs them. Yeah. Oh, maybe 3 or 4 actually. There's Avengers, there's Coco, there's Iron Man, and there's Avatar: Way of Water.
Okay.
So that park needs it. It's gonna get it in 5 to 10 years. I'll go back. I don't think I'm in a rush.
Yeah.
Disneyland, on the other hand, I wish we had around here, man. Mm-hmm. We did one day of Disneyland afterwards, and I wish we had a Disneyland, and I specifically say Disneyland because there's so much in that fucking park. That park has a little bit of Hollywood Studios, a little bit of Magic Kingdom, a little bit of Epcot. It's got a little bit of everything there, and a little bit of alcohol. A little bit of alcohol.
Which, that's the my least favorite
their
part
downtown
about Magic
Disney.
Kingdom.
Their downtown Disney is choice.
Yeah.
But I don't even want California Adventure anywhere else. I literally just want them to clone everything in Disneyland and drop it in, like, I don't know, Virginia, North Carolina, like,
or even like Ohio,
Michigan. I don't give a shit. Drop it somewhere within driving distance of me, because I would love to spend my weekends going to Disney.
Yeah.
And I can't do that where I live right now. And the only things within distance I only like to do like once every 4 years because they're not that great. We used to do Six Flags New Jersey all the fucking time, and then we became big boys, and I don't think it's worth it anymore.
That's fair.
Because I tried going to Dorney, which we're close to, and Hershey, which we're close to, and both of them are just like, okay, you can't, like, size-wise, I'm just too tall and too thick to ride a lot of the stuff they have. Shout out to Knoebels, though. It's a little bit of a drive, very classic, totally worth it. Hidden gem of Pennsylvania, Knoebels.
I still have to make my way out to Cedar Point.
I did Cedar Point.
That's the one that all my Penn State buddies talk about a lot.
I did Cedar Point, and I actually don't know if this is Pennsylvania. I think it might be further south, but I did King's Dominion. Okay. Which is owned by the same company as Cedar Point.
Yeah. Who now owns Dorney.
Who now own Dorney, yeah. I used to work at Dorney. I was a caricature artist. I have fond memories of Dorney. I'm not intentionally shitting on Dorney. I'm just saying, if there's a good park you want to go to around here, if I'm more relaxed, I'm going to Knoebels, and if I want some shit, I'm going to Hershey. Mm-hmm. We got to go back to Six Flags at some point.
I went back last year for their Halloween stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Their Halloween stuff this year was interesting, but I know it was also a shit show because they couldn't pull off the Horror Nights quality of getting an IP.
Well, they've been... talking about Six Flags is an adventure all on its own. They've been up and down and up and down and up and down.
They certainly have. You could say it's a bit of a Houdini's Dick Fuck Explosion 3000.
Yeah.
Which is obviously our title to the Houdini's Great Escape ride that resides near the front of their park. Let me repeat that. Houdini's Dick Fuck Explosion 3000. And we said that before Avengers Endgame. This is like 10 years ago with Sir Boo Berry and Disco Dracula. Yeah. That's how old that was.
Is it quite literally 10 years ago this year, I think?
I think it's 9 this year. Yeah.
No, there's no way.
I started the show in 2016. We might have been doing stuff in 2015.
Okay.
But it's actually, I think it's only 8 years. It's going to be 9 and 25, and it's going to be 10 and 26, which is when I'm thinking of ending the show. But yeah, we're going to get to 10 years, and then, you know, we'll go from there. Let's talk about Horror Nights California.
Mm-hmm.
I need to pull up the list for Horror Nights California because there were some similarities and some differences. And I would say, ultimately, this year, while some of the houses in Florida were better, I had a better time in California. Ultimately, I think I had a better time in California this year. They were able to pull off some cool stuff in the houses without making it feel super drawn out.
Mm-hmm.
They also had a greater spectrum of differences between the houses.
Definitely.
I was happy to see a return this year for one of the IPs that we'll talk about. Let's start from the same place, start from the same top that we did with Orlando. Where am I? Tell me your thoughts on A Quiet Place.
So going into it, I had only seen the first two.
Uh-huh.
I hadn't yet seen the new one, and I thought it was going to be a lot more of that invisible stalker.
Yeah.
And they definitely had a lot more of the, what are they called? Death Angels?
Death Angels, yep.
You know, active and in your face, which...
They had a lot more monsters than I expected.
Yes. So it was a lot... a little bit different than what I had imagined.
I would have loved half a house where all that you're doing is reacting to loud noises and all you're seeing is like, you know, a shadow of something pass over a window because you're trying to be so quiet.
Yeah. I'm sure it's very difficult to make everyone quiet, and then all of a sudden you get that one group that talks, and it ruins the experience for like four groups ahead of them,
people around
four groups
them.
behind them, you know, and it's just like a jabroni who's just talking about, you know...
Yeah, but like...
Whatever.
In my experience, and this is what I would compare it to the most, is in houses where there's a lot of like lines and a lot of dialogue, people are still shutting the fuck up to hear what's being said.
Yeah.
They're only reacting to the scare actors. They're not necessarily not getting the full story of what's going on. And I liken that both conceptually to A Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix adaptation that Orlando did, I want to say 2 years ago. That house had very little dialogue, and it still managed to be creepy as hell. Now, I am attributing that to the source material. Haunting a Hill House was one of my favorite things I ever watched, and I've watched it so many times since then. I only kind of like A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
So going into it, my expectations were already a little off the scale, but I like your kind of starting point of saying I wish it was more terror driven.
Yeah.
Than horror driven.
Mm-hmm.
And what are your thoughts on the animatronics?
They
you
were really well.
experienced Chucky last year.
Yeah.
We saw what they were able to do with smaller, sophisticated animatronics. Now we're looking at 7 to 8 foot tall, full bodied movements on the head scales and stuff. Yeah, like what's your opinion of like animatronics in a Horror Nights house?
I think it was really good. Like just cosmetically, I think that they definitely did what they needed to do in order to have something along that scale. They didn't cheap out in any way. So it was definitely like a well designed kind of instance.
Yeah, the concept was there and the execution was there. It's just in my head, I think when you look at what's lacking the most, I almost want to entirely blame it on just the source material for the movies. There's just there when I watch a movie like A Quiet Place, I'm doing it for the characters. When I'm walking through a haunted house, I don't give a fuck about the characters. I'm trying not to get eaten by huge monsters. You're putting us in the characters' shoes. I don't give a fuck about the characters. Put me in that world. That's why I wish it was based off of the new movie. In my opinion, the context, the story, the experience of the new movie is so much more an everyman story.
Yeah.
Anyone in New York could have gone through that same fucking scenario, and it could have been shitty for everyone.
Yeah.
Whereas the small family 2 years into it already, doing sign language and shit, I just don't care about as much.
Yeah.
Did you feel the same way watching the movies?
I really liked the movies, but I spent a lot of time learning sign language.
Okay.
So like there was that aspect
You
of
got
it
something
where like,
there that you're like, oh, neat.
Yeah, because I wasn't in a situation where I had to, but I was surrounded by like 2 of the 3 people I hung out with the most were in a situation where they like it was necessity for them to.
They were doing it.
You know, so like I would just pick up on things because they were doing it on the daily.
Yeah. I get that.
So I don't know. I enjoyed the first one a lot more than I thought I would. The second one I definitely felt was
let's do a sequel.
Yeah, like let's, you know, I didn't think at the end of the first that there was any reason to continue.
There was not.
And I don't know, I liked the third one, but I thought that it would be...
I loved the third one.
Yeah, I almost thought it could have existed in, like, not connected to the other 2.
Sure.
You know, like, I think that it could have just been...
a different story in the same universe.
Yeah. Which, you know, it kind of was, but... Yeah.
I mean, for me, you know, I'm not gonna rag on Quiet Place. It's obviously a successful IP. It's a successful franchise. This was just a weird year to do it, and I'll get into it after we go through our list here, because the thing about California versus Orlando, just to mention it again, is you get 8 houses and a tram in California versus the 10 houses in Florida. So there's always a difference in execution in how you actually go throughout the night. Quick shout out to Jurassic World. Their redone version of the Jurassic Park ride, awesome. Love going on it every time I'm over there. They are 10 years behind on updating the one in Florida. That thing needs to be taken out back like Old Yeller and fucking shot in the head. For real.
I think Jurassic Park is my favorite water ride, period.
We also don't really get wet on it.
Yeah. Which might be why it's...
Which is why it's your favorite water ride. Yeah. You'd never go on Popeyes and Islands of Adventure. You'd just get absolutely head to toe just fucking ripped. Going in order again, talking about it, I do think California's was stronger than Florida's in this regard. Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. Did you get a chance to see the movie?
No. Still to this day I've not.
So were you more so looking forward to the aspects that carried over from the other Ghostbusters movies, or are you just open to the franchise just being like, oh, it's guys running around ghost busting?
I was like, you know,
you
this
understood
is...
the assignment.
Yep.
Yeah. So now having seen it, do you want to go watch the movie?
No. And that was the thing that like surprised me because I remember last year getting out of Chucky and being like, I want to go watch that. And I thought that was
and I did, and I liked the TV show a lot, and I almost did a complete 180 on how I felt about Chucky as a character. I usually didn't get it, and now I get it.
I thought that Ghostbusters was gonna do that for me. What did do it for me was the Purge show. I turned around and went and watched the Purge because of, you know, and that was one that I always been like, no, it was I don't need
They did a good job with it. I mean, how much can you really do with a Waterworld set?
Yeah.
You know, you can only do so much. So when they say that they're bringing back Purge, we didn't get to do it last year. We did it this year for the first time, and I will say 100% worth it. Mm-hmm. Shout out to the Purge live show that takes the place of Waterworld in Hollywood. What about Frozen Empire were you just like, nah, don't give a shit? The bad guy?
Yeah.
The scenes?
Yeah, I think it's... Because I just...
demon dude,
I
big
remember,
open mouth, big blue eyes.
Yeah, watching the
Ice
trailer
stuff.
and them going, you know... You freeze to death, and like... maybe it's because I'm on the bigger end of things, but I have more insulation than most people. And
I
the
love
cold
the
doesn't
cold.
like... Yeah, it doesn't bother me the way it bothers others.
The cold never bothered him anyway, folks.
Yeah, so like, you're telling me that the cold's scary, and I'm telling you, nah, man, give me a sleeping bag, I'll be fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know?
Now, have you seen the other Ghostbusters movies?
I mean, I've seen the originals.
The original two.
I haven't seen anything...
Okay, so when we got like halfway through the house and we were in the facility and we got the 4 scares of the librarian, Vigo, the Scatelli brothers, and one of the demon dogs, were you like, oh, this is fucking neat?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at that point I was just like, that's fucking cool. I don't remember them going as far or as hard in Florida with the references to the other Ghostbusters movies. California did a really great job. There was one scene about halfway through those labs where all of them just come out at you, almost consecutively too. It was just 1, 2, 3,
Yeah, it was
4,
like boom,
just
boom.
like all of them, and it was really awesome. I turned to each of them and I said, "Oh my god, I didn't know you were gonna be here. It's nice to see you." But yeah, you get to the end of the scene. They're fighting Garaka in the firehouse, and there's a dude there shooting fire from his hands. You know, at that point, you just kind of signed off.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, was it a bad house?
No, it was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Overall, I agree. Any other thoughts on it?
No.
Yeah. Again, going in order, Insidious, The Further. This is probably the one we waited for the longest.
Yeah.
Even though we had Express.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Express for us meant 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes instead of an hour.
To everyone else's 45 to an hour. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you think of Insidious?
Which is how it was last year.
Have you seen any of the movies?
I have not.
Okay. Does this make you want to see the movies?
I wanted to see the movies before I got down there and just never found the time.
Yeah. They're a little bit to get through.
So
There's 5 of them.
Yeah, I couldn't find it on streaming either, which now it's on Peacock. So I was like, if they had put it on Peacock like a month earlier.
We did Hulu.
Okay.
And I say that because Alley Cat had never seen any of them, and the day before Horror Nights, we watched the first 2, and she liked both of them a lot. And I said, cool, the 3rd one has nothing to do with the first 2, and then the 4th one is a prequel to the 3rd one, and then the 5th one brings back the same family from the 2nd one, except a lot of things have changed and not in a great way. If you're going to watch any of them, watch the first 2. If you like the universe, I would say watch 4. If you're just a fan of horror, watch 3, and you probably won't like 5. I'm just going to say it like that. As someone who likes the franchise, as someone who likes both of the houses on both of the coasts this year, that's how I would say. Watch the 2. If you like the world, watch 4. You probably don't need 5. And 3 is only if you like horror movies, because 3 is a completely different experience. Yeah, the coolest thing about Insidious is The Further. It's their gimmick where the people astral project in those movies so naturally. This entire house, walking through the entire thing, is just the haunting scenes from all of the movies. I was not surprised to see that they had scenes, at least one, from every fucking movie. That was cool. We had a bit of red face in the beginning, a glimpse here, a poke out there, red curtains. Then we went very quickly into a lot of scares from the second movie. We had the mommy dearest going crazy, and the man dressed as an old woman jumping out of closets and shit. And then you very quickly see the cancer patient from 3 and key hands from 4 before they bring you into pretty much a, what do they call it? A notebook fucking, a play-by-play of the movie that was 5. You get the red face to come back. He pops out a bunch more times. You get a cool ending scene. You're done. What do you fascinate towards about the Insidious house, having not seen the movies?
I think that it was consistently intense.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. It's a really good.
Yeah, there were no ups and downs. It was just ups.
Yeah, you were constantly on edge. They were constantly throwing different things at you. They all looked really cool. Mm-hmm. They didn't let you down.
Oh yeah.
In any of those regards, in any of those scares. Do you still want to see those movies now?
Oh yeah. I think that'll be on my my list for sure, and I just need to really more have an excuse to watch 5 movies. You know, it's not always easy to be like, because I'm probably gonna watch all of them.
And fortunately, over like a weekend. It's easy to do because the only 2 that directly play off of each other, and I actually had a really interesting conversation with Alley Cat about it, is the first 2. Mm-hmm. Something I said to her that I actually would, if I had the money and the know-how to pull it off, I actually said to Alley Cat, I think Insidious Part 1 and Insidious Part 2 would make a really good stage show. Okay. There's a way that you could do the special effects for the further with lighting and mist that would look really cool on like a rotating stage, versus the way that you do jump scares in a movie, the way you could do jump scares by different lights and walls and stuff in the crowd. You know, I've seen enough horror adjacent shows live performed in different ways, whether it's the Purge Waterworld show or Grey House on Broadway, Sweeney Todd, Little Shop of Horrors. We can get into it. There's a history of horror on Broadway, on stage, Phantom of the Opera. There is something about how both of those movies just take place in like haunted houses, that it would be really easy to have a rotating stage that has different rooms in a house, and it literally just rotates at different times, and you're just in a new scene, but you're still in the house, and something bad is happening somewhere else, and you're just seeing a fragment of it. Yeah. You know, different things going on at different times. It's a tight fucking script. The more I watch it, the more I want to give my hat off to James Wan for overseeing those 2 movies. Tight fucking script, cool ghosts. Would honestly love to see Redface and Old Man Woman on stage scaring people. Costumes would look awesome live, and you could do a lot with lights and scenery and shit. Movies are cool. Highly recommend at least giving them a watch through. Getting into our secret IP that came out of nowhere on a lot of people this year, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This one was called The Legacy of Leatherface. Have you seen any Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies?
I definitely have. I think the only one I've seen is the first one.
Which first one? The original Tobe Hooper?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have not seen any of the new ones. I think I've seen... I may have seen 2 of the older ones.
I've seen almost all of the new ones. So I come from this very... I don't know, like, pleasantly seated opinion of, like, yeah, Bubba's a cool character. You put a gnarly-looking chainsaw in his hand, he could do anything with it, and I'd watch it.
Yeah.
Really, Jenny, he could paint a painting, and I would be like, oh, that's cool. Bubba as a character, super cool, super interesting. Leatherface, he's fun. He has a lot of different sides to him, lots of attitude. I rewatched the first one with Punxsutawney Trill and Deputy Dewey. I don't really like that movie very much. It's kind of dog shit, and it hasn't held up over time. I don't know why so many people like it and call it, like, ahead of its time. No, like, it's very much a product of the 70s, and it kind of belongs there. I know that's probably a rough opinion for people who love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Go back and rewatch it. It's not actually a great movie. Anyway, the second one, when they actually got a budget and wanted to basically redo the first movie, is a good movie, and ironically, still Tobe Hooper. It's almost like he, I don't know, fucking talked to George Romero on how to make a fucking solid movie, and next thing you know, he made a solid movie. But yeah, this was a greatest hits house in a very symbolic way. This was taking killers and family members of the Sawyer family from all different movies and just throwing them all into one house. I never thought that I would see the cook or the hitchhiker, or grandpa in a house since 2019, because Florida just did this in 2019. In fact, California might have had just done this in 2019, or 2020. It was one of these last years, 2021 maybe. They just did it. So a lot of people were looking at them this year again and just saying, why are we repeating this again so quickly? Yeah. Like, we just had Michael like a year or two ago. Like, you're giving us another heavy IP slasher, like, again so soon. And it's not on both coasts. That confused people even more. It's a California exclusive. What did you think of the house?
I liked it. It was, I think it was, like, solidly in the middle.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't, like, above and beyond what I expected, and it wasn't, like, disappointing in any way, you know?
We saw rooms from some of the movies, but it seemed to be a lot of loose interpretation, a lot of open concept, a lot of, like, I'm just going to put a couple characters in a room with a couple people screaming, and that's going to be it. I mean, like, you don't need much more than that when it comes to something as simple as guy with chainsaw. Because I think we got like 4 or 5 different Bubbas in that house, and he wasn't always holding a chainsaw. Sometimes he had the hammer, the mallet. But yeah, I liked seeing the dude from the second movie. I'm blanking on his fucking name. Shock Top, the guy with the metal plate in his head, who took over for the Hitchhiker film-wise because the actor was passed away. Yeah, you know, it was nice to see all the Sawyer family members in one big house, but it did kind of fall into the trap of just kind of being meat packing plant chainsaw family, as simple as it needed to be. Not more than that. Never strived to be more than that. And then the IP that I was disappointed of the most again, Universal Monsters, and this one was called on both coasts Eternal Bloodlines, and it's because the story, as I alluded to earlier. Saskia Van Helsing, Van Helsing's daughter and the last of the line, is hunting down the bride of Dracula because she's trying to create a new coven of vampires, and she's recruiting the help with the defense of female werewolves and female mummies. And it's just a lot of girl power. Yeah. I mean, the code name for this one online was Monst Hers. And I thought that was fun.
I think it was a really cool concept that they took, and like, I can appreciate that they wanted to have like a very female driven story.
Yeah.
But it did feel to me like
it's not bad because they were women.
No.
And it's not bad because the women were characters.
I think they missed the mark though.
It simply just didn't there was too much going on and it was too big of a concept that really here's what you do. You do Universal Monsters Collide, you just do it with female characters. Mm-hmm. The thing I loved about Monsters Collide was we only had one backdrop. We were in Egypt going through all of these tunnels, going through all of these crypts and tombs.
Yeah.
And the mummy was defending his turf, and the werewolf and Dracula just happened to be there for different reasons. They were all fighting over this amulet that could cure Dracula or cure the Wolfman or give the mummy his lover, his Anaxinamun, back. And they were all fighting. Yeah, it really did. It did feel like Unmatched or like Epic Duels or some shit. We had 3 heavy hitters all just going at it. Mm-hmm. For some reason this year with Bloodlines, they were just like, let's tell a story. An almost love story, action story, family story. And I was just like, no. Just put us in the forest, put us in some castle, and have all of these assholes fighting each other for some reason. Mm-hmm. You know, you could still do the same plot points. You could still have the bride being like, Saskia, let's team up. They killed my Frankenstein fuckboy. And Saskia's like, sure, I'll take whatever help I can get because there's a fucking werewolf with tits over there. And then they shoot at it, and then it screams and it runs away. And then the bride of Dracula shows up, and she's just like, I have the help of the mummy because we're both undead. And they shake their tits, and then everyone fights. And again, it's not about them being women. It's not. No, it's just. But like you could have had a better story. Could have done it a little bit more cohesively. Cohesive is the fucking word. Yeah, absolutely. Florida bears that sin almost singularly because the California house was actually much better than the Florida one. Okay. Was there anything that you actually like absolutely loved about that house? Is there like what stood out to you the most? I think they introduced the characters in a really cool way. I think that it was yeah, they had like little monologues. Yeah, they were doing like little acting scenes. You know, so that was definitely like a solid point. But then what they did after they introduced the characters, just like it, just I didn't running care. From vignette to vignette. Yeah, like you were just wondering when it was gonna be done. Yeah, and where's the last like, room? My balls hurt. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine. Let's talk about yeah, this tram. This coast had a lot of IPs. No, there's another one that I want to talk about. Okay. Because this coast had a bunch of IPs this year. And one of their kind of IPs is the one I was most excited to see returning. Because in, I want to say 2021, The Weeknd had a house on both coasts. Mm. This one was my favorite. When I heard of the entire night? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. We'll definitely get into it. When I heard about The Weeknd doing the first house, After Hours Nightmare, on both coasts, I was like, that's really cool. I wonder why this musical artist thinks he could do Horror Nights, because all the rumors that year were Billie Eilish. Mm. And I said, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. I don't want to listen to some whispering bitch sing shitty pop songs pretending to be dark. Let an actual pop dude with a dark twist, whose music videos have frankly always rocked so much more than Billie Eilish's. Let's see what he can do. Let's see what he comes up with. He meets with, you know, the head of Horror Nights, and they come up with a story together. And it's walking through all of his music videos, seeing all of the scary characters from those music videos, and being a part of that experience. And honestly, his music is bopping. Yeah, his music is fine. It's not, you know. Slash does the music for the Universal Monsters houses like every fucking year, but it's cool to see another artist like come up in here and like show us what they can do. And this year was super fucking interesting too, because I haven't seen any of his new music or material or music videos or anything to assume that any of that was from any of those videos. I actually think this was him just playing it right fucking off the cuff, just throwing everything at the fucking fucking dartboard. Yep. What did you really like about it?
The characters that were introduced on the poster, I kind of was just like, okay, you know, what's... It was very intriguing, right? It didn't give away a lot.
It's like the three personas that he has in his
it's like the child, the him, and then the
child,
old man.
the old man, and the blinding lights, like nosebleed sunglasses era of the weekend.
I've watched like lore videos and lore speculation about him and his music videos, and like he very much
I've only watched a couple breakdowns, but that's actually cool.
Yeah. He very much is a performer. Like
an artist, yeah.
Yeah, like his music is good. His performance is phenomenal. You know,
I agree.
And that's how I look at it.
I liked when he did the Super Bowl. A lot of people memed it into oblivion because you can, but like that doesn't mean it was bad.
Yeah, no.
There was never a situation where I said this was bad. It was intriguing. I would actually say it got me into him. I never
tied into everything else so well.
Yeah, it went through that album really well, and I just think it gave me expectations for what I felt like the house could be. And I'm glad that first one, I mean.
Yeah.
And I am glad that I was kind of right. There were multiple scenes going through the hospital rooms with people with bandages all lunging at you. There was a blinding lights mirror hallway scene. There was a blinding lights giant frog monster acid trip. That did happen in the first house. Now I will say the acid trip in this new house was a different level.
Oh yeah.
Did not see some of those things coming. Like he like gave birth to himself.
Nightmares, yeah.
He gave like birth to himself in one scene, or he's like the child form is ripping out of the chest of older version him. You know, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'd love to see someone who studies the lore of the weekend like dissect what was going on in that house, because all I can see was a lot of crazy fucking scenes. And we got some really good scares in there too.
Yeah.
And I liked that it took the time to make you uneasy.
Yep.
There were those build-up scenes in between big rooms where we would just go through a room with like a time and like a blinding light like right in your face, right at eye level. And after you would get through that room, you'd immediately be in a new scene with a new song and something new was happening. And I was like, this is kind of like hopping through his albums, hopping through his shit.
So there's a conspiracy that is not confirmed nor denied that like, so there's a lot of time travel in his videos.
That would explain the ages, yeah.
And he keeps going back in time to try and fix the mistakes of his life.
Oh, shit.
And sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse.
Yeah.
And that's what the old man is just this guy who's lived more lifetimes than he should have.
Loops.
Trying
He's
to
seen all
fix
sides
himself.
Of that coin.
Yeah, so there's... And like I said, that's like, it's not confirmed.
You can pick up on that in some music
a lot
videos.
of the fans have like said like, you know, I think this might be why some of these pieces of the puzzle don't quite fit, is because he went back in time and tried to redo all this, and that's why it's, you know,
this
different
house
levels
was more specifically
of
called the Nightmare Trilogy. And I think that I think what you're saying ties into that. I think this is him living out his nightmares. This is him recalling his nightmares. This is him visiting those nightmares. This is him feeding into, you know, the best things he can when it comes to Horror Nights.
Yeah.
And if there was anything else you like just really liked about the house that you want to talk about, is there anything else there?
No, it got me really, really into it when they had a DJ standing on top of the house as you're walking up.
As you're walking in.
And like I know for a fact that like I was moving and grooving.
Oh, we were bopping.
You know, and I made eye contact with him at one point, and he just fucking pointed at me for like a solid like 2
as
seconds.
we were going under.
Yeah. He was just like, yeah.
Like, this guy. It was the older version too, so it was cool to see. They would change him out as the night went on. There would be a smaller one, a younger one.
That's cool.
And then one with the sunglasses and the nosebleed, and then one old man version. But they changed him out as the night goes on. Abel actually went to California. People were snapping pics of him going through his own house, and
that's awesome.
I love that. I love that he just like on a random Thursday, literally him and his crew, it was like 16 dudes.
Yeah.
They get expressed. They get right to the front of the line. People are taking pictures. They go right through the house. No one else enters behind them.
Yeah.
It is just them experiencing their house. How cool would it be to be a scare actor in these houses, and you go to scare, and it's literally
you.
Like the dude you're dressed as, and then you realize it as you're doing it. Like, I don't know, there's something so cool about that. Like, I hear the stories about like Rob and like Sherry Moon showing up to like every Horror Nights every year, going through like their House of a Thousand Corpses house.
Yeah.
And you just see the smiles on both Rob and Sherry's faces, and they're digging it so fucking much to see the love and the dedication, the time, because when you play those characters, you are playing those characters. It's not like going through a fucking. That's the thing about Leatherface, like and Mike Myers. You're not just some dude behind a mask. Like, these are actors. These are scare actors. They are doing something. You know, it is so much different for the people in the Weekend house or the people in the Universal Monsters house to have to go through these scenes and play these characters where we have expectations for things, and then see them either nail it or just fucking suck ass at it in different regards. That's covering all of the IPs except for the tram, but I want to talk about the tram last.
Okay.
So we'll cover the last two houses just to touch on it. The one you didn't remember the most, Dead Exposure Death Valley.
Yeah, even
Dead Exposure is like 2 or 3 in their series of zombie houses. Huh. The only thing they have in common is that it's always pseudo-militaristic, pseudo-hospital, pseudo-nuclear zombies. Very 28 Days Later, just kind of running around being radioactive zombies. And the cool thing about this year was the 50s backdrop, the glowing zombies, the angry monkeys, the people in gas costumes and army fatigues and stuff. I thought it was fun. But then you talk to Where Am I, and he doesn't even have the ability to remember that house. It's like
now,
blanked from the night. And it's just like...
Well, I think I had just gotten a drink as we were going
maybe,
up there too,
but it's just like, it goes to show that like when an IP doesn't hit on all cylinders,
then
it is forgetful as fuck. It is Six Flags quality. And you're just like, you can't help but sit back and just be like, couldn't they have tried like a little bit harder and just made the theme just a little bit different so it's not as stereotypical?
Yeah.
Because that's where I look at Triplets of Terror and I'm like, no, they did a good job of what they were trying to do with Triplets of Terror. Because Triplets of Terror, you know, there's a scene where you're outside in this kid's backyard and there's a cop car like literally in the house. The red and blues are going and they have a light rainfall in this warehouse.
Huh.
And you're just like, no, the theming, the work they're doing here is on point. It's the story, it's the actors, it's the costumes that suck. And that's like the opposite of what's going on with Dead Exposure. The costumes, the zombies were cool.
Yeah.
The house is just so blank military base, blank lab. No one cares. It was overlong. The lighting was crazy. It was like black lit with green and yellows and white fluorescence everywhere. It was weird. What I'm trying to say is it was weird. Is there anything you want to say about it?
No.
Because you barely remember it.
Even now, as you're describing it, I'm like, I remember the barrels were kind of cool.
Yeah, because you could like see the zombies in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, but that's all I remember is the
You
barrels.
don't remember Big
cool.
Monkey? Big Monkey like ripped out some dude's spine and just started fucking throwing it around the room.
I do remember that.
Yeah, I liked that. I thought that was fun. I was like, oh, Big Monkey with big old brain sticking out, being all crazy and shit.
The spine I remember from.
Rips a dude's spine out. Real good.
From the D&D days.
The good old days. Yeah, forgettable, but I still thought it was neat. And then the sequel house for this year, and the last house we're going to go over, Monsteros 2. This was called The Nightmares of Latin America. Just out the gate, did you prefer original Monsteros, or did you think this one was better?
I liked original.
I have to agree. I think the creatures, the monsters, the execution, the originality, everything about seeing the gore, frankly, the gore of that original house, and getting to re-see it again this year. Yeah. Because of Florida.
So last year in California was its first year?
Is this year in Florida, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay.
What did you think about this second one? I feel like there were 3 monsters in this house. And there were 3 monsters in the last one, too.
Yeah.
This time it had, ironically, El Capitan Muerte, basically. It was just a skeleton in a sombrero.
Yeah. What was what I think of when I think of, like, Latin America horror.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like, last year it was very much like...
It's very Coco.
Yeah.
It's very Dia de los Muertos.
It was a little more, like, folklore-y last year.
Last year was folklore,
This year it was a little more, like... I don't want to use the word stereotypical, but, like, it was quintessential.
When it says nightmares, you're getting the... I don't know, you're not necessarily getting the boogeyman, you're getting the scary stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year's monsters were more interesting. The one I remember the most in this other one, I mean, I'm seeing 3. It looks like a wolf, like a chupacabra, but I think it's actually just like a wolf, like an angry wolf that eats kids. Yeah. And then the fucking like stretched faced beetle looking fucker. Let me see what his name was. El Cucoy. El Cucoy was like a shadow monster that kept creeping into kids' bedrooms and shit. Like,
pop up
he popped out at me 6 fucking times in every goddamn room, and every time I gun handsed him and said, El Cucoy, El Cucoy, and he fucking loved it. He followed us from one room to the next. They always do that in these houses. It's fucking awesome. But yeah, they basically just had Captain Death, a wolf, and El Cucoy. So just not as heavy as a lineup. Because last year they had bird person that eats kids, shape changing
for a long time.
Shape changing woman that also wants to steal your kids, but mostly to drown them. And then they had the guy who will rip your fucking spine out and put you in his bag of bones. And he also ripped spines, which was awesome. He was a stilt walker, and I tell the story all the time of how that dude was crouching in stilts and then stood up and followed us into the next room and ripped a dude's spine out and waved it at me. And I remember being like, you're my fucking hero. He followed us from one room to the next. And El Cucoy did that this year, and I can't help but think it's the same fucking guy.
Yeah, probably.
Just being crazy.
Somebody who found their calling.
Yeah, I mean, Horror Nights actors, only so many people are built for it. Yeah. How do you feel about the Monsteros 2 house?
It was still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
On the evening.
It's weird that the IPs didn't feel as effective this year. There was just something about it that felt like a throwaway year. And, not for nothing, I'm a part of the message boards. You could actually find me under Captain Death on the Universal message boards. A lot of, YouTubers go on there and talk about stuff that's going on and speculating stuff, and it's always really fun to be a part of that speculation season where we're all kind of bouncing off, hints of what's going on behind the scenes, or quite literally for what might be coming that year. And I can't help but think that this year we really fucked ourselves, guys. This year there were 2 big IPs that people really wanted to see, and one of them was an actual discussion that dissolved and never happened, and one of them was a discussion that never happened, but people still thought it was happening. The one that was never going to happen and never actually had any discussions and people were just seeing the wrong set photos was Nightmare on Elm Street. I think people were seeing Insidious, scenes from Insidious, and seeing the red door and maybe stuff that looked like nightmares or whatever. I think someone said there were rumors about multiple hats and gloves being brought into their warehouse or something. Who knows? They probably have tons of this shit in their studios.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting that there wasn't... At some point someone saw something. I just think it was misguided. And it had legs, and it carried, and people fucking carried it. And I do want to say more specifically for Hollywood. There wasn't a point, I think, mentally where people were like, oh yeah, this is definitely coming to Florida. Because at that point, we knew Florida's ratio was already way fucking off. Because we had 6 originals. Arguably 7 originals in Florida this year, which is like unheard of. It's usually a 50-50 split with IPs. So there was this crowd of people saying it's Nightmare on Elm Street or it's something else, and Florida got neither. And California definitely didn't get it, but we got Insidious instead, and I think most people were okay with that. At the end of the day, most people were okay with that. Now, here's what gets me, and here's where I'm kind of hopeless, because it could have, should have, and didn't happen for various reasons. I don't know the necessary ins and outs, the exact details, but when it's one of the biggest movies of the previous year and it doesn't get represented and it's owned by one of your partners, a lot of people just kind of see these big signs pointing at something having all the reasons to happen and then doesn't. And I am, of course, talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. That movie did gangbusters, numbers-wise. Last year, they just did Last of Us.
Yeah.
We had been proven on multiple sides of the coin that a video game adaptation mixed with a slightly successful film could end up with us having a really cool fucking house under either side of that metric. Whether it's based off of the video game, like Last of Us did, or whether it's based off of the movie, like any fucking Blumhouse movie.
Yeah.
We coulda, shoulda, and didn't get it. I heard through the grapevine of the thread very publicly that it was Scott Cawthon's fault. I know he is hard to work with. I know those rumors have been around for a very long time because the movie took 10 years to get made. Imagine how long a singular haunted house would take to get made. But then there's like shit that he's signed off on over the last 10 years that doesn't make a lick of fucking sense. And you kind of sit there and think to yourself, like, this is the team behind Blumhouse. We just made you $1 billion. We want to integrate this into a Horror Nights house. Let us do this. You have the budget to be the headlining fucking IP
would have
this
been
year.
massive.
And something happened in the development phase where it was out before houses were even being built. I don't know, man. Whoever's out there, whoever's fault it was, Scott, I understand these are your babies, but dude, it's Horror Nights. Let's see them in some cool costumes. Let's get maybe an animatronic or two. Let's make it happen. There's no reason that it can't happen, especially after a movie where we see that these people can wear these costumes no matter how much they cost, and we can make cheaper versions of them, and we can mass produce them, and you can make it happen on both coasts. There's no reason for that not to happen. Now, if it's Universal's fault, it's budget. And I don't think Scott is after budget. I think Scott is after creativity. I think Scott saw concept work, saw a pitch that he didn't like. I think he saw something that he disagreed with, and when he tried pulling the reins in his direction, Universal just said, agree to disagree, and walked from the table. I don't want to blame that all on Scott, but I think that if Scott was the one to walk away from the table, Universal, Blumhouse, throw some fucking money at the guy for fucking real. We made Universal so much money with Last of Us there last year. Arguably, Five Nights at Freddy's is bigger.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
It took me... I wouldn't have said for sure unless you agreed.
Well, I think
but I do think
Last of Us is bigger with our generation.
Agreed.
I think Five Nights at Freddy's is bigger overall.
Over our
because
generation.
it hits more generations.
Because I'm still into it, and I'm 30-something.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who finds it fascinating. I liked it when I was in high school. I like it now. It's been 15 fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still into it. You know, I can't think of many franchises, you know, even outside of horror that have that hold over me. But, like, whenever I see a new one come out, I don't play it, but I watch someone play it because I like to see the new stuff. There's no reason that can't happen. And the reason I'm only holding my breath about it a little bit is because it might come to the Vegas thing that's being built as we speak.
Yeah.
There are going to be 4 houses and maybe a ride in Vegas.
I'll say, it feels like they might have been like, let's put this together, and then just gone, if we need to do this, we need to do it right, and we don't have enough time for that.
Or...
You know?
Yes. Or they optioned him to say, you will get more money and it'll be more of a mainstay if we do this for Vegas.
Sure.
In which in which he looked at them and said, oh, this house can be up for 3 or 4 years in a single location.
Yeah.
And I could get bigger shares out of it if I agree to that.
Sure.
I could see him saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the rumors for the Vegas one have already come out, and I don't think it's on the lineup.
Okay.
But I think they want to do a Exorcist house. They want to do a Frankenstein house. They want to do a Scarecrow the Reaping house. Oh. And they want to do fucking something else. I don't know. I don't remember. But I didn't see Freddy's on that list. And a part of me thinks that when you hear the rumors that the talks went south this year, then they went south in general, and it's not happening, and it's not gonna happen. And that's where I have to say, when the second movie also makes $1 billion, the same way the first one did, Scott, I want you to come back to the table, and I want you to say, okay, now we have 2 movies we could base it off of instead of 1. We could change the scenes a little bit more. Yeah. We could be more flexible with it. We can do different costumes for different coasts or the same costumes for both coasts. I don't care. I want to live the Five Nights at Freddy's experience. Just seeing the screen used costumes last year was cool. In California, we got to do that. Yeah, I don't know what I need to say or do, but Five Nights at Freddy's has no excuse at not being at Horror Nights after the movie came out.
Yeah.
In turn, with Blumhouse, talking about Blumhouse, the tram this year was based off of Blumhouse, and I want to say it was headlined by Megan.
Yeah, very much so.
which was fine because the rumors for years was that Megan was going to get her own house. I don't think she needs her own house. I think she's much cooler. She's much cooler being a scare zone tram thing.
Being the first thing you see off the tram.
Right. Before you get hounded by The Purge, Black Phone, Happy Death Day, Freaky. They're all fine.
Yeah.
I like all of those movies. I like Blumhouse. I am the person who goes and sees Night Swim. I am. I've talked about it. I saw Megan. I've seen most of the Purge movies. I saw Freaky. I saw both of the Happy Death Days. I saw Black Phone. I am a Blumhouse person. I thought the tram was just fine.
Yeah.
I, however, am not giving it the accolades I gave it last year because they didn't let us go to fucking Nope again. They closed off the Nope section.
Yeah.
Because it didn't thematically fit in with Blumhouse. And that's where I say, fuck you, it didn't have to thematically fit in. I wanted to walk through there. Because they really ran us through there last year, and I didn't get to, like, soak it in. I go back over videos now where I'm, like, looking at different things that I liked from that movie, and the video is only, like, 2 minutes long, and I'm like, I could have spent 5 whole minutes walking very slowly through that set. They still had Bates Motel. They still had Norman out. And I will say the walk wasn't as bad this year. Maybe I'm in better shape, but the walk wasn't as bad this year. What did you like the most about the Terror Tram this year? And do you probably say that last year's was better?
Oh yeah, 100% last year's was better.
You liked the Exterminators.
I really liked the like just the motel line where like different people were popping in and out.
Different rooms.
I think that was one of like the coolest visual areas because
it's also
they
cool to just walk through the screen used set for Psycho.
Oh yeah. And I don't know. It was really really cool to me that the tram parked and all you see is Megan just standing there. And like that in itself was almost just like, I don't want to be the first one off the tram.
We were in the back.
Yeah.
I literally said, let's be last.
Yeah. So it was kind of a really neat experience. So we went through the Blumhouse, like, I don't want to say museum thing, but like the little exhibit they had last year.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen any of the movies. Okay. Since then, I watched Black Phone has been my favorite.
Black Phone is the best, yeah.
And Megan's obviously the one that everyone talks about. And
just okay.
Yeah, but so much so that like I had seen people doing the dance with Megan on TikTok, and I like it's like 3 fucking body movements. Like I figured it out pretty quick. Yeah, and I was like, we didn't end up seeing like the little stage that they had set up. Yeah, but I was prepared to do the dance with Megan if I had the opportunity to.
Oh hell yeah!
So,
you said you've watched some of the Purge movies. Had you seen Happy Death Day?
No.
They're okay.
Yeah.
I think they're funny. I think they're fun.
I
like time loop movies, Groundhog Day style movies.
I remember when it came out, and I watched like an extended trailer, and after watching the extended trailer, went, I'm glad I don't need to watch that movie now.
Because you got all your answers right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Freaky was very similar. Freaky Friday, the horror remake of Freaky Friday. A teenage girl swaps bodies with a serial killer when they're both, like, struck by lightning or some shit. Yeah, I mean, you get everything you wanted from the trailers. It's just there's funny kills throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
I would say both of them are in the same camp. Both of them do the same things. I don't like the Purge movies as much. I think my favorite Purge movie is the second one. It has the best narrative. It's very Escape from New York. I just think it's same note. Yeah. Everyone would probably say the first one is the best because it's like the classic home invasion scenario. But I like going into the city. I like being on the run. And that's where I look at... I think there's even a TV show. I didn't watch it.
I haven't seen any of that.
But it's just like... it has the concept, it has the makings of something great. It's just it needs someone to say, let's do something different with it, you know, to make something cool. And that's where I look at the live show and I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot lately on, like, dystopias and utopias and things like that. Yeah. So that's kind of what drew me into it, was, like, the degradation of political power into that idea. It's an interesting concept, you know?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, the one day out of every year from fucking 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., anything goes throughout the entire country, and it's their stimulus. You know, they say if you want to make your fucking power play and kill your boss, you won't be arrested. If you want to set your fucking school on fire, you know, go fucking do it. The government will handle it, because as opposed to not handling it, you just get national tragedies all the time.
Yeah.
If we all agree to the gun on the table, at least then we're all responsible to what happens with the gun on the table. It's not, you know, there's something funny and interesting and pseudo-political and class system discussion. There's a lot of different ways you can go into Purge. I don't care. I think it's simple enough to say people are going to try to kill other people, and sometimes there's just a bunch of people out there killing other people.
Or just killing to kill.
And that's all it needs to be.
Yeah. See, I'm the type of person that if it were real, I would have each hour planned out.
And that's what scares me about you as a person, because of course you would.
Yeah.
I'm the asshole who, like, I think of one of my favorite scenes from MacGruber, where earlier in the movie someone cuts him off when he's driving and says, "Nice car, dickhead," and he immediately says, "Fuck you," but then starts remembering the guy's license plate, KFBR 392, KFBR 392. And then as the scene goes on, as he's walking through the club, he's literally just like, KFBR 392, KFBR 392. And then, like, 45 minutes in the movie happens. And another character halfway through the movie finds a notebook that he had on his jacket when he went missing.
Yeah.
And he opens it up, and it is just full of KFBR 392 KF. And it's been like weeks in their universe since this dude cut him off and called him a dickhead and made fun of his car. At the very end of the movie, MacGruber loses his shit and goes, "Oh my god!" And you think, like, he's finally coming to terms, he's gonna go save the government, he's gonna save the world. No. He found KFBR 392's car in the wild. So he picks up a pipe, he starts bashing all the windows in, and then he covers it with gas and lights it on fire. Instead of going to save the world. That would be me in The Purge.
Sure.
I would remember the one person who inconvenienced me the most in a random act of shit douchebaggery, and I would hunt them down and fucking murder them and get away with it.
I was actually talking to another buddy recently that so I just had to go through background checks because would you know what to do with a license plate? Like if you memorize somebody's license plate, do you know what to do with that?
No.
I have access to that information.
Yes, you do.
You know, so like
I would.
Yeah. So if somebody got me to that point where I was willing to lose my job over it, I have everything about them.
You would 100% be able to identify those things. That's cool.
I mean, not really.
Good to know. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
In my head...
Tempting some days, not so much.
In my head, the craziest thing I could get away with is, like, hacking into someone's literal system. Like, I have an actual crack on a USB drive.
Sure.
That if I slip it onto any computer, anywhere, I can immediately get through any of their security and access whatever they have in their file.
Sure.
That's the craziest thing I probably have on me. Other than my loose idea about being able to access the dark web.
Yeah.
I have a feeling I could go there if I needed to. But yeah, the craziest thing I could physically do is break into any computer. So if you're telling me that, like, there's a computer at your work where you go to look up license places, I could fucking break into that and access the same database that you can.
Yeah.
You know, we're indulging in our psychotic tendencies for a moment as the episode winds down, folks. It's been like 2 hours.
It's purge season.
It's purge season. We gotta talk purge season. You were a big fan of the Crows. The big still walker costumes.
Yeah,
from last year. They got a zone this year. Mm-hmm. They were the Murder of Crows. With a Z.
I think that they were, because you knew where to go to find them.
Mm-hmm. It's smack dab in the middle of the park.
Yeah, it was a little less like, oh shit, there they are, you know. Like, that was definitely part of it.
We caught them walking between areas last year, and it was just cool to see them because I didn't know they would be there. Mm-hmm. Now this year they were like returning.
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Crow, and I was like, that's a fun name. Mm-hmm. And then he was there, and we saw him again, and it was fun. There was a cool luchador section in front of Monstrous and Quiet Place this year. That was fun. Lots of mutant monstery guys dressed as wrestlers for some reason, all fighting and, you know, playing brass instruments really loud.
Nachos Libros.
Yeah, pretty much. There wasn't really anything else going on, and I will say that for Florida as well. There was two cool scare zones in Florida this year. The third one and fourth one were kind of lackluster.
Yeah, I think we got through it faster this year than last year,
we
didn't we?
certainly did. There were less people there this year on both coasts, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I was home, if not in bed, by midnight on both coasts this year. And that's crazy when you look at the footprint and the time spent for both of those things.
Yeah.
Florida's scare zones, the coolest one was the swamp. They had a bunch of zombies walking around in the swamp. It was really cool. They did that glistening, like, laser light water effect that you had to walk through and just filled the fucking alleyway with fog. Really great. And then there was a medieval section in Florida where they had, like, ye old torture. And it's like they had an actual guy doing the whole brazen bull. They had a whole guy doing the Viking death angel thing. They had a guy doing, like, throwing knives at a guy who's clearly dead. They had an Iron Maiden. They were sticking people in an Iron Maiden and screaming, and blood effects were coming out. It's just the classic fun Ren Fair, dark Ren Fair shit that I expected, and it was fun, and it was fine. The other two scare zones weren't as much. There was a Blumhouse scare zone in Florida where they had the dude from Black Phone, the chick from Freaky, the dude from Freaky, a couple Purge people walking around. But it's like, okay, I just walked through the mist and saw 9 people from different movies. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And then there was a weird Surreal, one of the icons in Florida this year. Her section was just kind of like a nightmare vortex. Honestly, it just looked like the Upside Down from Stranger Things. No one can tell me that it didn't. You will never change my mind. And, in fact, Surreal, everything about Surreal was very Vecna-ish and wasn't great, so I don't want to talk about it that much. Did you have more fun this year or last year? Specifically at Horror Nights.
Specifically at Horror Nights last year.
Okay.
So I just think that, like, overall, I was trying to jam
just as much stuff as we did in 6 days last year into, like, 3 this year.
Well, I just mean in terms of, like, when I'm ranking them.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to jam houses into my top 3 last year. I was like, okay, if I move this one, I gotta, you know, this year it was like, I have my top 3. You know, there was no, like, you know, fourth place didn't feel as
you weren't going back
good.
And forth on the scale this year.
Yeah, you know, it was like,
no,
okay,
that was good. I'm done.
Yeah,
Moving on.
Where last year it was like, well, I don't you know, I had a lot that I was like, I don't want to put that in fourth place.
Good. That one was good.
You know, yeah, like
which one was better? That's fair. There was a lot of really good stuff last year, and I, you know, more power to California for also getting something that Florida didn't get last year, which was Evil Dead Rise. Yeah, we could certainly wax poetic about Horror Nights for the rest of our lives. I personally just put down my dates for Florida October this year because I'm going down with a handful of people. If you were to tell me that you're going to come down and stay with your friend over that same week but join us at Horror Nights, I'd be obliged to take you with the group and show you Orlando this year. Even if you want to bring your friend too.
Yeah. Come on up. You come on up. Yeah, come on up. You get cuddles now. You get belly rubs.
It's me. He's talking to me. I'm so good. I get the belly rubs. Kisses. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what the new year may bring. It might be another throwaway year, honestly. When it comes to another year being a throwaway year because of them opening Epic this year, we honestly might be looking at a situation where we get stuck with kind of the same quality as this year. But at the same time, I'm having fun just going to Horror Nights. It's never going to just come down to IPs, just like how it's never going to just come down to originals. You're always going to find what you enjoy about both of them. And there's just like how you're going to enjoy Horror Nights. Exactly. I didn't even talk about the food this year. There's things to talk about. There's always something to find.
Yeah.
And when you don't like the stuff, you still have the rides to fall back on. We did Transformers.
Yep.
We did Mummy. We did Jurassic
Mario Kart
World
too, didn't we?
We did Mario Kart because they had it open this year, and we expressed that shit, and it was awesome. We did Mario Kart like fucking 4 times this trip. It was awesome.
Got some high scores.
We really did, and I'm still sad that I'm gonna have to get a new fucking
band
app. No, I think the band will carry over. You're gonna have to get a new app.
Yeah.
To carry over events for the Florida park, and
I guess that's
I'm gonna have to make that my new mission next year. Make that count.
Oh, I'll get as close to 100% as I can on Orlando.
Sure.
Lifetime.
Sure, I mean, I'm already thinking of going there twice this year, next year, so it's just like, when we look at Epic being...
Maybe do a long weekend just to get the first month badge, you know, like fly down Saturday night.
That's what my brother is doing, but I don't know if I could swing first month.
Yeah.
June is rough for me, but I am... Is
he going down with a group?
No, it's just him and his girl.
Okay.
In June.
I might try and piggyback a couple things with him. I'll message him. I'll be like, yeah, if you get a hotel room, I get a hotel room. Well, then we can fly together and rent a car together.
He just today at like noon pulled the trigger on the brand new like Epic Universe package, and he is doing the resort that is in the new park.
Yeah, he's
doing Helios.
Okay.
Because the pricing came out and it's fucking inexpensive. It's $450 a night.
Yeah, that's.
You compare that to some of Disney's best, where it's $1,500 a night, and you're like, wait, what? This is a hotel attached to Epic Universe, and it's pricing out under $500 a night. What?
Yeah.
But anyway, the 3-day ticket is about $600. So, yeah. If you want to talk to him about that, he literally just pulled the trigger on it this morning.
Yeah, I'll message him tomorrow and.
But if you want to
see if it makes sense for him, if it makes sense for me.
I'm definitely going down over my birthday.
Yeah.
Just to do 2 days of Epic.
Yeah.
But when I go in October, we are doing everything Disney and everything Universal. And I already have a family suite at Disney and a family suite at Universal. But all of my beds are currently taken. So you would definitely need to stay with your buddy, but hey, come down at the same time and do fucking everything with us if you really want to.
I'll say, because we've done that so many times with your sister.
Yeah, you've been on 2 Disney trips with my family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, hey, we got our room, you got your room, and we're going to do 80% of the stuff together.
Sometimes we're going to see each other's for meals, but other than that, we're mostly just in the same park, maybe hit a couple big rides together, but fuck off. Mm-hmm. You know, it happens.
Yeah.
And also, food and wine. Coming back down for food and wine. Yeah. Always the choice to make.
Food and wine.
Food and wine is the reason you do Epcot in the August to November time frame. Shout out to food and wine. Yeah, we talk about theme parks a lot because it's been ingrained into like my livelihood. It's something I want to talk about more under a different circumstance. Something I actually plan on doing at some point over the course of the next 2 or 3 years before it gets completely away from me. But yeah, I could talk about Horror Nights, Universal, Disney, theme parks, rides, the technology, any of that stuff for hours. And I plan on doing it more in the future. Because, you know, if we're here talking about this right now, we're most likely going to be back next year with a larger group of people to talk about all the stuff that happened then as well.
Yeah.
I think it's already on my schedule because I'm that far in advance already scheduling things like that. But anyway, where am I?
Where am I?
Your top 3 were...
So, let me look at the list again, because Weekend was definitely number 1.
Weekend was number 1.
I know that. I liked...
Monstrous.
Yeah, Monstrous was pretty cool. That was number 3, and I think I put Insidious at number 2.
That's a fair go. I think Insidious is still my number 1 for both coasts, and then they get really different from that point.
Okay.
I like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's probably not in my top 3.
Yeah, I would say that's like a solid number 4.
I think I agree that Monstrous is 3, and I would probably put, I would probably do the same 3, but honorable mention for Flip Flop 1 and 2, and honorable mention for the Terror Tram this year. Honorable mention for Terror Tram every year. Yeah, I don't feel like
Terror Tram is such a cool.
I don't
design.
feel like I could put it in my ranking because it's not a house. But the fact that it's a large scale walkthrough is still something that they can get away with and do well. I'm here for it. I miss the zones that felt like mazes. They used to do that. They used to make it so that to get from one section of the park to another, you would have to cross through a horror section where they actually had like walls and boo holes and scare actors, and it's almost like a mini maze, except you're outside.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, bring that back, bring that energy back, because we have too much space in Florida. The only narrow scare zone in Florida is the one that was the swamp this year, and that's why it was so successful. It cuts right through that park. The corridors are narrow. Anyone can hop out of anywhere, really get to you. But California used to have, I want to say, 2 sections that used to be kind of mazes, but they were outside and they were in between houses. They weren't just zones. It wasn't people posted up. It wasn't an area dressed to look a certain way. It was a maze, but it was outside, and it was to get from one house to the other.
Yeah.
And it was cool.
It kept you engaged the whole time.
Yeah, I remember one of them being like a trip through hell.
Okay.
And there were demons everywhere, and skeleton people and shit, and I was like, that's cool. Then there was the Toxic Tunnel. Why ain't they bringing back Toxic Tunnel, baby? That was in California. To get down to the lower lot, if they take you the back way, the handicap accessible way, you used to have to walk through the entire backstage tunnel down to the studio.
That sounds sick.
And it's a driving tunnel, so it's as wide as cars can get through, but it was like a half a mile long of just a tunnel, and they would fill it with scare actors and gates so that it was a one-way on one side and a one-way on the other side. But these motherfuckers would jump over these gates and come out of nowhere and hide in little access terminals and shit. Like, bring back Toxic Tunnel, baby. And hey, open up the Nope set. No reason to close that off. You shouldn't have to pay a premium to go to the Nope set. I'm saying it right now. VIP guests, you get enough already. You can't take the Nope set away from the general audience. They all deserve to see that. Jordan would want everyone to go see that and walk through that, because then it makes it cool for the people who are doing multi-days to go back and see it during the day on the actual studio tour. It is so much cooler to take the time to walk through it with scare actors. Even though it was Blumhouse this year, you could always dress up 5 people in the Us outfits, walking around with scissors, and throw 3 people from Nope in the Gold Rush, Gold Digger, section, and have them talk about aliens and shit. It's not very hard. Get a couple more scare actors. You can afford it. All right. Is there anything you want to say? Any other notes? Anything you want to add?
No, that's...
Because we got a sleepy dog.
Yeah.
She's been snoring all episode. I'm sorry for anyone who's picking up on the audio that is this snoring dog. She's an old girl. It's how she do. The ASMR of dog snore.
You should add just like 3 minutes of dog snoring. Yeah.
No, that's me snoring. That's not dog snore. Yep, there it was. You could just see it.
Yeah.
A little bit. But anyway, hey, where am I? Thanks for joining me on this talkie. I think talkies are easy because I'm good at that. I'm good at talking nonstop for 2 hours. A lot of people aren't open to that. Well, I mean, I guess the listeners are open to that, so thank you. Yeah. But physically sitting on this couch doing it with me.
I mean, the whiskey helps.
The weed also helps. Yeah, it helps both of us. But yeah, we'll get you back for some stories soon. I know that we did a series last year. We always have our little moments to touch in every year, but there's a really funny story I want to read with you this year. So we'll get you in for the anniversary this year. Happy 8-year anniversary, everyone. But hey, this is the Halloween episode this year, so I hope everyone enjoys their Halloween. Drink responsibly or drink irresponsibly, just Uber. And
well, that is the responsible part, right?
Don't get so trashed dressed as the Green Goblin meme that you get naked and sit in someone's shower for like 2 hours at their house party where there's only one bathroom and there's a toilet stall across from the shower stall, and you are face down in the shower stall naked while there are women outside talking about how they need to change their tampons and that the same guy has been in there for an hour and a half and is apparently in the shower. And someone thought it was a good idea to put him in the shower and put it on warm. Like, just let him have a time. Just let him have a shower. No, you fucking idiots. Deputy Dewey, I'm looking at you. You should have known to put the water on cold and wake his fucking ass up and get him the fuck out of there. I never said it to your face, but if you listen to this episode, Deputy Dewey, you should have known better. And you could text me about it right now telling me how you should have known better and that there's no other excuse. But, yeah, the person who did that, I will remain nameless as to not embarrass them anymore. But you know what you did. So maybe don't do that again. But everyone else who's also dealing with the same situation, have your Halloween party, drink responsibly, do your drugs, just, make sure you're handling your shit. Yeah. Don't do the stuff I just mentioned. But do the stuff you can handle and the stuff you know you can handle. I personally think I will be on several edibles at my Halloween party this year. And I'm going to go around saying the same thing to everyone. which is my character's catchphrase, to the point where it's probably going to get annoying how much I say it. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you do eventually get there. I'd like to think your previous your previous engagement won't take all night, but who knows?
I can't see, knowing who the audience is that'll be there, there's no way that it goes past like 10 o'clock.
It's tough for a wedding at this point to go past 10.
Yeah.
People are just tired. You've been there for 5 hours. People just want to go home, specifically around here when it's already getting cold out at night. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
Well, and it's all outside.
Yeah, it's another thing. I have that to look forward to on Friday.
Yeah.
This was Lots of Pasta with Where Am I? And we were talking about Horror Nights, but we'll be back to talk more Horror Nights hopefully in the future. So I hope. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
This episode did really well last year, talking about Horror Nights with both you and Alley Cat. Both of those. I believe that was one conjoined episode or 2 separate episodes. I don't even fucking remember. But I talked about Horror Nights a lot last year, and people were receptive to it. So here we are doing it again. And if people are just as receptive to it again, then we'll do it every year. I don't give a shit. We'll do it every year.
Yeah.
Even when the show's dead, we'll do it every year. It'll just be a surprise. We went to Horror Nights. Now we're going to talk about it episode. And
I'm excited to do Orlando after the last time trying to do Orlando, it failed.
Orlando is different. It's a different beast, and I think I really, 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 really hope one of 2 things happens. I hope we get a white whale IP that they've never done before. Mm-hmm. They've been talking for years about doing the thing. I would fucking scream if they did the thing. It was just the anniversary this year. They had a better time that they could have pulled it off. I don't think they have the budget for it, though.
Okay. But
they're working on it. Or... Five Nights at Freddy's still on the table. Maybe not. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Get a big white whale IP, something that's never been to Horror Nights. Get us in there with a big fucking mama. And give us an original, because the originals matter. In Florida.
The originals are the ones that scare you, that surprise you, I should say.
Well, they stay with you because you have the warehouse, you have the visuals, you have the atmosphere. Give us the big visual spectacle house. They did it. They tend to do it once every year. This year, I want to say it was Goblin's Feast. Last year, I'm gonna have to look at the fucking house names again. The one that stands out the most is the Blood Moon Cult. It's just every scene in that house as you walk through it just felt like you were actually in like a Salem, like a Massachusetts town, and you were actually being like hunted down by this cult. They kept coming out of the darkness, driving you into some Wicker Man fucking barn houses and shit. It was crazy. Everything was red lights. It was a lot. The previous year, Dead Man's Pier, the snow house where you actually go into a large boat that they built some of the rooms in. Holy shit, was that one of the most beautiful houses I've ever been through. The Yeti house, Terror of the Yukon. That one had beautiful scenes. It actually felt like you were walking through like a campground up in the mountains, and there were a bunch of Yetis hopping out eating people. It was fucking great. Sometimes in Florida you get these big houses with big scenes. Even their Monsters house last year, the France, with Jekyll and Hunchback and all that shit, their version was just huge. The scene actually opened going under like a French bridge, and it was actually 30 feet tall, and there was a dude walking around, and they had like mist and fog and all, and you were actually going into the sewers under this bridge. It immerses you so crazily in Florida, and you are not going to get the intimate, I'm in a little black corner going from one room to another that happens in California all the time. In Florida, you get full scenes where you've been seeing it for the last minute as you walk forward, and now you're going through it, and you're getting it all for what it's worth. They did it for Last of Us. They did it for Universal Monsters. You get these huge fucking set pieces, and it sends the entire experience to another level. So you're gonna see the big capabilities this time, not the intimate, terrifying capabilities. The scare actors in California are way more aggressive.
Sure.
They go hard.
That's where all the actors live.
They're jumping, exactly. Yeah. They're jumping in on those small boxes and there's tight corridors, and they're saying, I'm going to get in your face. In Florida, it's not about that. In Florida, you go for the IPs because you're looking to recreate the scenes from the movies. You're trying to bring the studio aspect to Universal Studios, and hopefully that is something you get to see, because it is some next level shit. And that's why, ever since going in 2019, I'm just going to keep fucking going as many years as I can. Whichever coast I need to.
Yeah.
If I have the opportunity to go to both, which won't be next year, I will. But I think it's just Florida next year because of Epic. And unless California gets some White Whale IP that Florida doesn't, and I feel the need to go...
5 nights. Yeah.
If they got 5 nights, I would fly over just to do 1 day of Horror Nights and fly back maybe the next day.
Sure.
A Friday to Sunday thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It would be a lot. It would be expensive, but I would do it because it's worth it. Anyone who listens to these episodes who's never been to Horror Nights, you don't need to go to Horror Nights and have this, like, big multi-million-dollar expensive experience. Horror Nights is like $300 a person with Express. I get it. Not everyone has the money to spend on a single night, even if you're local. Still support your own local haunts, though. Maybe I feel blessed living in PA, but we have a lot of them around here. I even the other day just went over where they filmed Hell House, the Waldorf estate in Laheyton. Fantastic. I took a bunch of people there who have never been there before. They said it was everything they were looking for because the house actually has scenes from the movies, from the costumes from the movies, you know, but they do their own thing. It's an awesome house. Just support your local haunts. Go to your local theme parks. Go to your local haunted houses. Go to your cornfields, your corn mazes. You know, we have, like, Reaper's Revenge and Terror in the Fields here.
Fear Factory is one of my favorites in Philly.
Exactly. Yeah. There are so many good examples. Terror Within the Walls at the Penitentiary, Eastern State in Philly. We are blessed in being in a spooky state. But I know there are other spooky states out there. I'm sure New York had a lot of crazy shit this year. I almost went up to New York this last weekend just to do a couple crazy things that they've never had before. I know Massachusetts and, like, fucking Boston, Salem, they're rocking Halloween, like, every year. I see ads for going up there all the time, and I want to do it, but I just hear it's a lot. Like, I'm used to it, but I just hear that it's a lot. So the people that have the opportunity to do these things in your neighborhood, in your area, do them. Support them. Keep that spooky shit going, because if I've learned anything over the last, like, 5 years is any of those things can stop at any time. There are people who have never experienced these things. If we want them to continue happening, you got to go and support them. You got to keep doing them. You know, go to your Knoebels, go to your Hershey Park, go to your Dorney Park, go to your Six Flags. Whatever horror shit is near you and it's accessible and it's within your budget, do it. Support your local haunts. Get your creepy stuff in. It 'tis the season. I have to stress it now more than ever. And I'm not a hypocrite. I did a lot of horror stuff this year. Horror Nights on both coasts is a lot of money. And I even came back and said, I still want to do more horror stuff, so I went up to Waldorf. And even that's money. So it's just like, go do your shit. Even if it's just a hayride in some dude's forest on his cropland, you know. Yeah. Just go do it.
You should come to my hayride.
Yeah, what's going on in
my forest?
What's going on in your hayride in your forest? Are you talking about your balls?
My butthole.
Yeah, I was gonna say your happy trail. You heard it here, folks. Where Am I's inviting you to his forest, to his hayride.
You can come on in.